Yeah, I've chocolate. Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is still Thursday, January 16th, 2025. It is 3 p.m. and we have our last group of the day, ADS, the Agency of Digital Services. We appreciate your flexibility in showing up a little bit earlier. We got through a couple of things earlier, so we're glad to have you here now. And we have many new members, so we'll go right over and introduce ourselves, and then we'll have you introduce yourselves, and we can talk about your budget, and we have a few other questions, as you may have heard. So,
good afternoon. I'm Dave Iacoboni. I live in Morrisville, and I represent the Lamoille, Washington district.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm John Cosensi. I live in the town of Burke and represent Essex Caledonia district.
Hi, Mike Nigro. I represent Edmonton.
Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing Washington Chittenden.
Good afternoon, Jim Harrison. Chittenden, Mendon, Killington, Pittsfield. And this is your lucky day. I get to have the budget area.
our lucky year. Everybody else can remember to funnel your questions to Jim. I'm Robin Scheid. I'm from Middlebury.
Tiffany from Burlington.
Trevor Squirrel, Underhill and Jericho.
Wayne LaRush, Franklin 5, Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, Richfield.
Hi, I'm Mike Marucki, and I'm from the Wyndham 4 district in the southeast part of Vermont. I represent Putney and Dummerston.
Lynn Dickinson, I represent St. Albans Town. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all.
Tell us who you are, and we can introduce everybody. So,
for the record, I'm Denise Riley Hughes. I'm the secretary for the Agency of Digital Services and also the chief information officer for the state.
And I am Kate Slocum, and I'm the chief financial officer for the Agency of Digital Services. And I'm from Northfield.
and would you like to introduce yourself as well in case you're talking later?
Mr. Kelly.
John Kelly, Chief Staff Leads.
Great, thank you.
And I guess I'll have to say I'm from Cavendish, so I like the southern part of the state. Thank you very much for having us here. And we did put a presentation together because, as I'm sure you guys have all been listening, how internal service charges are allocated, how they are consumed, how they are expended, and then how they are recovered can be a bit confusing. And so we have put together a presentation that goes through a little bit of an overview on how we are structured and what the different recovery methodologies are that ADS uses for expenditures. And I'm going to let Kate kick things off.
Great. So everybody has a copy of this on their desk. So that's what we're using. Great.
So for the record, again, Kate Slocum, ADS Chief Financial Officer. So we, as an internal services agency, are primarily funded with what we refer to as an internal service fund. We actually have 2 internal service funds that support 95% of our operations, 98% of our operations, and a small portion of general fund, and then a small portion of special fund. And the general fund and special fund are specific for GIS services that we provide to the state. So everything else we do is funded with an internal service fund. That's basically a credit card for state government. We get spending authority annually for what the anticipated expenditures will be for the year. And then we have to work through various recovery models to make ourselves whole. Some of that is 30 days in arrears. Some of it is 12 months, 12 to 18 months in arrears, depending on what type of service we are providing. In the slide that you're looking at here, we have 2 areas that we like to refer to in that internal service fund. One is called what's often referred to as the ADS allocation. And that's basically taking the core services of IT and state government and saying everybody benefits from this, something like the network or internet access. Cybersecurity. Those are all things that every user in state government benefits to some level at. So we take all of those costs and annually it's been anywhere from, I think 4 years back, it was $8 million to now about $12 million We take that total number, we spread it across all headcount in state government, so all classified permanent employees, full-time. And every agency pays for their portion of the ADS allocation. That billing goes out early on in the year. That's usually sent out around August. And then we move over to our demand side. And that's where you see more along the lines of consumption of product, whether it be consumption of professional IT services, so end user support services for unique applications that agencies might have, or for project management services, specialized cybersecurity services. We have a few categories on that, or it can be for individual needed products that one agency might require, but another one may not. One that comes to mind quickly are accessibility products like Dragon Naturally Speaking. You might have an employee in your staff that actually needs that tool. That's considered a bespoke product. We buy it specifically for you, and we flip that cost over to you. We don't add anything extra to buy it, but what we use is the commodities of scale to get the best pricing on that product. That's why it's done centrally. And then the last thing under the demand is what we refer to as telephony or VoIP services. So for all the phones in state government, we have a team that supports those, and we bill those out as a usage per line fee. So that's ADS and ADS allocation and demand in a nutshell.
Yes, yours.
Hey, so as you know, a lot of different departments in BAA are, and basically, I think it's on the demand, a lot of the service level agreement increases. Some have suggested some of it's an increase in Microsoft license fees. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Others have suggested that maybe it's just they didn't have any good numbers they budgeted, so they carried over last year's budget, and then there's been inflationary preferences. So it's all over the place. We're trying to understand, because we don't see those increases for like other as a rule, like say human services, which is an internal service fund that's, allocated for your human resource people in the various departments. Or the attorney general, has a recouping of their costs for the in-house attorneys that are in many of the agencies. We have it for ADS, and I think we had it last year as well. So we're trying to understand, what it is, how can we do a better job budgeting going forward so that we're not, because we don't know January, if there's going to be money to pay for these. There is this year perhaps, but as a rule, we don't know that.
Yeah. So jumping ahead a little bit, but that's okay. The SLA specifically is all centered around consumption. So if an agency needs an enterprise license, such as Microsoft for their employees, they are billed a year in arrears for the license that they consume and the support services associated with that license. I know there's been talk that Microsoft licensing costs have increased. That's not due to a rate increase. That would be due to
Additional staff.
So additional consumption. There was a slight increase in the cost of Microsoft, but that was not due to a rate increase. That was actually due to staffing pressures. So we have staff that support those licenses. And as you all know, being in the Appropriations Committee, staffing costs increase year after year. So that's part of our recovery model within the SLA. But overall, the rate for Microsoft has not increased from last year to this year. It's been a consumption driver.
So your staffing costs have increased like everyone else's staffing costs, whether it's because of Pay Act or
Exactly.
whatever. But departments would know that. You would know that when we're doing last year's budget.
Mhm.
So
when we provide, so annually we provide an SLA bill. And in that, it gives the detail around what's been consumed in the various areas. And then we do our best to provide a projection along with that for what the coming year should be. Timing has been challenging to get that out. I will admit that. We are working on bettering that process, actively working on bettering that process. But we do provide a projection, and growth in the SLA has been steady year after year. There have not been massive spikes across the board. So I can't really speak to how departments are budgeting or accounting for those numbers, but I can say that the communication lines are always open. We are fully transparent. We will provide any information that offices need for their budgeting purposes. And if we are to look at historical growth, it is a steady number. It's not, there are not massive spikes. But again, I cannot speak for how a business manager builds their budget.
So just back to the staffing piece right there. So if I were one of your staff people here, would I be assigned to multiple departments or to a department to support their needs?
So it really depends.
I know it depends.
Go ahead, sure.
Just on average.
It does. So we do have some dedicated teams that are embedded. AHS, I would say, would have the highest volume of staff supporting their systems. Typically with the embedded staff, what they're supporting is a lot of the existing active systems that are in place today. And then you have shared services, and that's the team that's supporting Microsoft, the cloud, kind of the core cloud services, our private cloud, public cloud instances themselves that are available to everyone. So it will vary by department. And as far as the recovery goes, at this point in time, there is some differentiation based on legacy models. So ADS was created in 2017. This model followed us into our agency, and it's clear over the last few years that we have outgrown it, and it does need to be changed. And so we have been working with the Department of Finance and Management in actually looking at SLA and addressing that and identifying areas that we can be more predictable for it. Because as we're planning for FY26 and you're looking at BAA for 25, the SLA fees that we're talking about here were all consumed in arrears. They were all consumed the year prior. So it's not an easily predictable model because we won't know that full consumption until the end of the fiscal year.
Based on, if I could ask one more question.
Yeah, go
based
ahead.
on, like, the proportion of time someone might have to dedicate to a place, a department, different project that might be coming up in the mix of their upgrading whatever they need for their technology needs.
Right. That's true, along with the necessary access to areas. So that could come and go depending on what project you're working on.
That's the somewhat of the unpredictability year to year, perhaps.
Correct.
But you have some sense of total staff needed, at least.
We make estimates every year and build that into our budget and make those recommendations to the various business offices as well.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, these increases in this budget adjustment are based on FY24 actuals?
For SLA, yes.
Yes.
SLA.
Yeah. So offices receive their, what we refer to as the 25 SLA bill, but the costs in that bill were seen by ADS in the prior fiscal year. So we take the 12 months of use and consumption and we compile that into an invoice that gets delivered to an agency, usually about 3 months into the fiscal year, the following fiscal year.
So if an agency wanted to know how much they were spending, can they get information from you on what it's looking like before 6 months in, or, more often if they feel like they're worried about that?
That's been something that's been really challenging to provide because we have to do a report, a consumption report at a certain time frame in the year, and it's towards the end of the fiscal year. But it is an area that we're looking at. We've been talking to departments and agencies about this since 2017. Is there a way to do more billings in the SLA for these consumption services, maybe quarterly, so they can do federal draws more actively? And it's something that we certainly look at. But the one thing, and I know that you're sending me a message right now, is that when we buy a license, say for Microsoft, we pay for the full 12 months. So that has to be recovered by the using agency, whether or not they take that on 9 months in. You have no way to prorate it. And
That seems like an easy one, though. It's the other stuff. We heard from the state's attorneys who got a call. It said, you're 2% of our head count and 65% of our storage because of the body cameras. So somebody recognized something, but so I can see the license thing, but some of this other stuff I think is a little more difficult to see. So I saw Rep. Dickinson and I saw Rep. LaRouche.
Yeah, I think you answered one of my questions. So 3 months into the current year, which would be like sometime in, let's say, September, you would get the bill for the fiscal year 24. And that's now still 24, but it's the 25 budget. Now that would not be in time for doing the 2025 budget. So that's why it's now on the BAA. But you would be now in a position to propose something for 2026, the fall of 24.
that would be 100% accurate, except for with that bill, we provide a projection for the coming year for budget
You
building
do.
purposes. Yes.
So they have a projection for their bill, for their budget for 2026 when they get that.
Yes.
But that's why it's now in the BAA, is because that budget's already been done for 2025.
Yes, yes. So we'll just say that happenstance, possibly. Last year, they received their bill and it said, this is your 24 SLA charge. And we project for 25 that it's going to be X amount. Now the bill has shown up and it's off from that projection. So it could be more than what we projected. It could be less, and that would require a BAA adjustment. You're correct. Yes.
But they can use that to fashion their request for the 26 budget.
Mhm.
So you're always got this tail that you're always trying to catch up with.
It
Yes.
is a model that we have absolutely outgrown. And the word that we use to describe SLA truly is a credit card. And I think that it is sometimes, if I could make an analogy, treated as a credit card that nobody ever looks at the statement. So they're not looking at what their balance is and they're waiting until the end of the year, and it adds up quick and you don't realize it. So we do want to cut the credit card up. We would like to move things out of
I
SLA.
think it's what the representative from Middlebury talked about, is that it's some way you can go and do it more often, or halfway through the, or something,
So
not even just the end of the year.
Our current finance system doesn't allow for that. It's not built to accommodate that type of methodology. But our hope is, and our expectation, and we know it's possible, is the new Workday system will allow for that. And that will make things much easier, where you should be able to do weekly snapshots if you wanted to, and be able to have real-time availability to expenditures to budget, and also burn down of your budget to expenditures. That's the ideal world that we are moving into right now.
Which IT project is that one?
This is the ERP project.
It's been going on for, okay. We hope it'll,
The good news is I've been here it'll be 2 years tomorrow, and we are live on the project. So we have kickstarted the project. We're in our second month.
we will hear more about that, I know. Rep. LaRouche, and then I believe, are the representative from the Energy and Digital Technologies Committee, who will introduce himself, will also has a question. So go ahead.
So our problem is at the time of budget building in the fall, the agencies don't have an accurate way of estimating what the cost is going to be for that budget cycle. And it's in part because their usage might change or vary in the next year, and partly because staff might change, and partly because you might have projects that you are going to have that are going to cost money that they don't know about, that would be passed down through them in the next year. Although your planning may anticipate how much those costs might be, but they're not going to know about it unless you communicate to them. So just between those things, there's not a better mousetrap that could better project what the actual costs might be. Understanding you can't, I don't think there's any way to get this perfect.
Yeah, so I guess I would say is the projects that we would be talking about would always be theirs. There are no surprises. We don't bill them for something that they're not aware of.
But you don't have your own, major infrastructure or major systems that you're building or that you're putting in?
Unfortunately, no, we
Okay.
typically do not get to provide care and feeding to the ADS agency. All the work that we're doing is for the agencies. And so I guess a good example would be unfunded initiatives or unfunded mandates that contributes to unplanned SLA. I think that the pay increases and if I could use summer EBT as a good example, that was a federal program allowance that we wanted to take advantage of. That was a DCF program, so the billing went to DCF. When they were planning their fiscal year budget, that wasn't a project that was on the radar. And we had to do that work. And then they're stuck with an overage for that, which is staff time, license costs, and possibly professional services. So these are things that they do happen, but they are tracked. Our invoicing is pretty exact, and unfortunately, it's on an Excel spreadsheet today. But the other piece is it's complicated and it's complex, and asking somebody who's a CFO or a business analyst or a financial analyst in a business office that is managing health and human services and ask them to understand technology, it's a hard task. It's a feat. And so it isn't a perfect model. And I am hopeful with the work that we're doing with Commissioner Gresham that you will see some changes where this won't be an ongoing issue and a growing issue.
It won't be as big, but it'll probably always be an issue. Just the numbers may not be as big. I think that's accurate.
That's accurate. So if we can actually.
We've got 3 more people lined up for questions. So Rep. Stevens, then Rep. Campbell, and then Rep. Squirrel.
You said that you talked about a credit card. You get a credit card at the beginning of the year and then you do all the services and then you bill back and you hope to recoup it. Does that include salary?
Yes.
So essentially your jobs, the way that there's, I'm sorry, this is a question, not a statement. Are your jobs then considered billable hours? Like do you have to fill out billable hour charts? I have to say I worked for Diva for 8
Our
hours.
staff do, yes. Yes, we have a very complex time tracking system which exists. And although it does run through VTHR, we have to supplement that with Excel documents to be able to provide our agencies with the supporting documentation so they can track those hours spent to project and to their funding streams to identify whether or not that work was allowable. So yes, that's there.
So, but an employee is not a gig worker. They're getting paid a salary on a scale. I mean, that's the nut that you have to make through the billable hours.
Yep, but it's not.
So.
It is hourly, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, that's all for now. We've been spending a lot of time just trying to wrap our heads around this idea that, so essentially when you bill like this, you need this payment before the end of the fiscal year to close your own books.
Ideally, yes.
That's in the instruction manual, whether or not.
Yes.
As a coffee stain.
I would be very happy on June 30th if I could hand over a balance sheet that shows a net 0. That would be wonderful. But we do have a methodology to identify what is a pending receivable and, to work through what could be potentially a surplus or a deficit in our fund. But ideally, yes, it should be paid by the end of the year. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Scott, would you like to introduce yourself and answer your question?
Sure. I'm Representative Scott Campbell. I'm on energy and digital infrastructure. And I'm in connection with the person for your agency. So pleased to meet you. And my first question is, what the heck is SLS or SLA? SLA.
So it stands for Service Level Agreement, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with that phrase.
I looked that up online, and that's what it said, but it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Correct. Here's mine. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's some sort of annual billing process.
Yes.
Which you go through with other departments for billing for ADS services in support of other departments. Is that basically it?
Yeah, that information's in the packet and I'm happy to walk through that with you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Okay, thanks. Rep. Squirrel and then Rep. Blumer.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think this is useful for everyone, particularly the new folks that are here. I just want to offer, I think, an observation. If I absent the state's attorneys and their video issue and their increase in their SLA invoicing, it seems to me that the majority of what we're seeing here in the BAA is AHS. Okay, almost all of
Human
it's
Services,
AHS.
okay.
And so there may be something specific to AHS here in terms of either budgeting or maybe unexpected utilization of services. So I just want to share that observation. I don't see it across a lot of these areas. So I think that even though you're addressing some issues that are there, it may not be as big an issue as we're all making it out to be.
And that you've been looking through the
I've been
spreadsheet to
looking
see. Yeah, great. That's really helpful.
So thank you.
Good point. Okay. Rep. Blumer.
Well, hey, so, hello.
Go ahead.
I was just trying to calculate the change, percentage change from, in the SLA from, fiscal year 23 to 25. And so it's, roughly 30%, right? And so I'm just wondering, I can understand the bespoke stuff because I know what we've funded to the ways in which we've funded infrastructure, digital infrastructure. I'm just, do you imagine that this will increase, that we will be, the jump in costs will be pretty regularly consistent with this pattern?
I would say if we stay with this model as it exists, that's a definite possibility.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why we are working with finance and management to find a better way.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And can you explain the increase in the timesheet category? Is that because timesheets have become much more complicated? I'm not sure exactly. I guess I don't really know what timesheet means. So there's a, everybody fills out a timesheet. I'm assuming that you have to support the, that online platform. And so but it going from 18 to 29 is.
So that's a great question. So if you remember between 22 and 24, we had a number of IT modernization projects that came on board. And a lot of the work that happens within that are timesheet billable employees. So we're talking about project managers, but also developers that are necessary, enterprise architects that are necessary, where we've had to turn on those resources and turn on that billable mechanism for that service because there's a greater need in this area. So that's what you would see in the timesheet area. And a lot of it is billed back to, like I said, the specific projects that exist. And part of, we work with agencies to identify what those costs would be related to those projects through the IT ABC form, the work of our ETMO team, and project managers do that. And we make sure that the business understands the numbers that are going to be coming their way in these project areas. And they do sign off on the form. So they're well aware before, we apply a resource.
And if I could add to the rates at which the timesheet billing is calculated on have not changed since 2017 either. And they don't necessarily equate for the cost of the actual hourly rate of those individuals if they were to work within the agency. So it isn't a foolproof model. It's
No.
not the best model. For timesheet specifically, though, it does point to the growth in projects. It also points to some of the flood recovery efforts where folks that were working in one place, we brought them over to assist with some of the flood recovery efforts as well. There is a growth change in the timesheet utilization, and the bespoke piece as well continues to grow. So these are areas where you would assume timesheet billing to be a lot more predictable. We've shown and seen that the SLA is not a predictable way of invoicing and charging and recovering for expenditures. The allocation has stayed pretty flat and pretty low for an agency of 389 staff members. And I think that was the other point in regards to the timesheet billing is we have not grown. We still have the same number of users. We've not increased in our size. It just has to do with the volume of work that's coming forward.
Thank you. And Rep. Harrison, that's a question.
Yeah, you caught my attention on the billing rates haven't changed since 2000. Obviously, there's been a little bit of inflation since then. How do we change that? I mean, it doesn't seem like, it almost seems like automatically that should change each year if you have increases in pay and benefits.
We are in the process right now. We have brought in a financial analyst who has had a number of years in state government working for different business offices, which is nice because she has a different lens on how other business offices within the state operate. And she's doing a full classification analysis around the different types of roles that we have, what their average billing rate is for hours billed or hours charged back to the agencies within that classification, and what the rate would or should be given the higher cost of healthcare year over year that we're seeing, the increase in pay that is coming through the union. And we are reviewing some of those details right now with finance and management. So not something that can rectify the needs of the various business offices in regards to their SLAs, but something that is on the top of our radar for fixing. God bless you.
Anybody else have any questions? Have we actually looked at your budget? Do we have anything in budget adjustment for you guys?
There was a reduction, but it was just a correction.
Yeah, I think somebody missed a
Decimal.
Oh, that one.
Yes, the first one on the list.
Yeah, the 83,000 that was really something else, or, yeah.
So for the last year and a half, we have been actively working with finance and management to make this a lot more palatable and looking at the cost of IT services, not the cost of SLA unmanaged, unpredictable. And so we're trying to make sure that there is a way that both finance and management can articulate this to the business offices, but that we can have a model where IT costs are much more predictable. And there's a component of that if you read our statute, that we have a responsibility to IT spend and IT cost savings as well. And so I think that we are very, very close to being there. And I expect within this session, we should be able to talk about that with you.
So we're seeing obviously the different parts and different agency budgets that we get. But not every agency came and say, I need 200,000 increase our budget because of ADS charges. So the departments that aren't part of BAA with that request, do you have any idea why they're not here? I assume they also got increases if you using old billing models. And my second question related to that is, do you know what the total charges, I don't care who paid them, but the total charges that you have billed out that, in total might be reflected in the BAA.
In the BAA,
Well, I mean, I guess if an agency didn't put extra in their budget,
Huh.
and you got a charge, maybe they can cover it, and they didn't have to come. But what was in the fall, what was the total amount that you charged for the previous year, sort of like a catch-up?
So for SLA
so
specifically.
yeah, for SLA specifically, it was $27.5 million
Of back charge?
of back charges.
Of consumption. So of use of services and product in SLA specifically. So remember, that's one of only 5 recovery areas that we have. So SLA is just one of those buckets, but that is the year in arrears.
It's not the biggest, it is a big
Bespoke
one.
is still the biggest. And if you, yeah, so that's where the pie chart.
Yeah, if you go to this
Page.
slide here, that shows you 23 through 24, where our expenditures and associated billing lived by recovery model. So in total, for 24, it was 27.6 million. And that is what the 25 SLA bill represented to agencies and departments in totality.
Okay, I think I found my number. If I'm a state agency, I'm doing my budget, you've given us a proposal, right? That estimates for the following year, right? Right, did I hear you right?
Yes.
And I know I spent whatever portion of the 25 million from the prior year. I'm going to add that into that estimate you gave me, I think. So the difference is 2.6 million.
Correct.
That's what's not being accounted for. And it sounds like most of that's in AHS, if I'm reading this right.
So our growth from last year to
Yeah.
this year is 2.6 million in totality. You are correct.
And this is,
Am I missing anything in that?
No.
it's the executive branch and all the elected offices.
Yeah.
And it does still include a chargeback for judiciary as well. So we are still paying for certain items for them where we have an annual recovery that they're paying for.
Yeah,
Or
I
that
mean,
they're invoiced.
that's one piece of it. And then you have your other areas that, whatever, maybe they had to replace their computers or.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yeah, that would have been an additional charge that may not have got budgeted.
Yes.
Did that look like it was only 2.6 million when we looked at all those pieces?
Well, AHS was a couple million, I think in total on the central office.
Yeah, I didn't have the number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were some others that were
But if you go through.
500,000, yeah.
Well,
we could-
that's-
we're also
Yeah.
assuming when a department did a budget that they took their share of the 25 million from the year before because they had paid for it in that prior fiscal year and added it on. But that may not be an accurate assumption.
They would have been
Yeah.
told what to put in for that.
We
you
can't
know?
speak to how they built their budget. But we can tell you that the growth from last year to this year is what you're seeing on this paper, 2.6 million.
So
An additional 2.6 million, so it's still 27. So
I
it's
don't remember last year, Maria might, but did we have similar across the board increases in our various budgets for
budget adjustment.
budget adjustment? You did, but did the various departments?
They didn't come forward in BAA,
Did it?
no.
That's why we're all so surprised, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we didn't see this last year.
We did have ups and downs in the regular budget though.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe they just held it off and did it for fiscal year 25 budget review. I don't know.
Rick Dickinson?
Okay, you have this ERP, this workday that you've now going live with. Would that have contributed, I mean, is this something that goes across all of these different agencies and when you're integrating stuff, or would that have had an impact?
No, and we actually were successful in deferring last year's expenditures and were not charged for that year. So there were no FY24 expenditures for Workday.
And right now, that project is funded by the IT Modernization Fund.
Correct.
Which everybody helps. How do you?
It's a special fund.
So that fund was established 2 years ago with the use of surplus general fund. And there is no funding source currently to feed into the fund for future projects. That's certainly something that we're interested in talking to the legislative body about in the future. But all the funds that sit in there right now was a transfer from general, surplus of general.
And that will handle this ERP.
Yes.
Okay, how long is this all going to take, just out of curiosity?
It is projected to be a total of 4 years with a couple different rollout cycles.
And you got a set price and you're on your way.
Yes.
Okay. Experience a lot of it. I mean, is this replacing the ERP that we talked about a long time ago?
I think that the conversations have been going on since maybe 2015,
12, 2014.
Yeah.
before I came here, much earlier, but we made a lot of great progress in the last
Yes.
year and a half.
Leaps and bounds.
And Secretary Clark and I are both the executive sponsors of the project, and we've got a strong project leadership team moving it forward.
And as a financial individual who has been in state government for over 20 years, working in a few different financial systems, I can tell you, I'm very, very excited about Workday and the possibilities that's going to bring.
That's good.
It should offer the transparency that this committee is looking for as far as budget builds and expenditures.
Year-over-year growth.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm getting chills.
Will it help other projects get through, will get through the faster?
Yes, I think it will help build cost justification models, and it will also show on the rates. It will show different rates and expenditures around timesheet billing and project burn down. Yes.
Yeah.
So you're kind of stuck with the model you have now until you get that. Is that right?
We're on the edge of our seat. Yes. We are stuck. Yes.
And next year, how long? When?
So I think finance
Getting better.
will go live in 28. HCM, which is human capital management, will go live in 26.
As well budget.
Yes, budget will go live in 26 with
Yeah.
HCM.
Okay, so that's
That'll be a big improvement.
That's going to be helping you.
Yes.
That's going to be very helpful. Yes.
So, and I do want to share too, that just so that I know that we put a placeholder here, that we will start seeing some industry pressures, both from the inflation side. We're already starting to see it in contract negotiations, where technology companies are looking to come in at much higher inflation rates on contracting than ever before. So we're working very hard to look at where we're duplicating purchases of different products and try to scale that back so that we're not double paying for things. The other piece would be the tariff concerns that we have around hardware and things shipping to the United States. So we're working hard to avoid that, but also track that, because that's a concern around increased prices, especially when you look at everybody has remote machines and you're all with laptops or tablets, and we have to better plan for that, and we have to take advantage of the economies of scale rather than doing onesie twosie things here.
Yeah. Great. Anything else from this committee? Any other questions? Anything else you would like us to know?
No, but I do appreciate you giving us a chance to explain things, and I know it's not simple, and I just no, with technology.
Something, let us.
Yeah, but we are committed to improving this, and I really expect that you'll start seeing that this session.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in and answering our questions before we got two more revved up, so.
I will admit, you're a little nervous.
Yeah, I hope we don't.
Thanks for being, you were easy on us.
Understand, and we see lots of big numbers suddenly that we haven't seen before.
And it's so complex. I mean, the recovery model really is very complex. I had a conversation with Annie Nooney yesterday after her testimony, and, just walked her through everything. And she's like, wow, I didn't realize it was like this.
Yeah.
So, our door is always open for those conversations with any of our partners in state government, because it is confusing and frustrating, and I get it.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're glad you're there.
Yeah, one last thing, both the police and the state's attorney and the sheriffs and other entities, I'm sure, within the state government talk about the storage of images
Yes.
and how much space it takes up, and everybody's trying to find some way to, so, I mean, are you guys, I would hope you'll be involved in this.
Very much.
Because there's got to be some way.
Very much so, yes. And this is a nationwide problem right now, especially where everything's going digital. So I love that the new committee has the word digital in it. The size of these files are growing. We're also now storing recorded video that we never did before. And video is also a higher capacity storage unit. But you also have to look at the different tiers of storage. And I don't think that we have actively in the past gone through that exercise around how are you using this? And how often do you need to access it? Because there's hot storage and there's cold storage. And we would be better served putting a lot of that in cold storage because you don't need to have it all the time in real time. And that's what we're working on with state's attorneys and sheriffs. And we're finishing up a pilot with public safety now.
It's a lot going on.
There it is.
We're glad you're on the
It's
case.
exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thanks, appreciate it. So committee, we have an agenda for tomorrow and it's changed even since you last looked at it. So I'm gonna put that up. Is it changed since you tried to do that? Okay. So tomorrow, thanks to Aaron's machinations, we'll start at 9 a.m. with the Agency of Natural Resources. Then we have the Public Service Department. Or Department of Public Service, John, that's you. ACCD, Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Tom, that's you. Doug Farnham is coming back to talk about ERAF and the flood update. We've had some questions that have come along and he was so short last time. And we said, we'll get you back. And this is that we're getting you back. Then after lunch, we have the Cannabis Control Board coming. So Mike, there's something for everybody tomorrow who hasn't had a turn yet. So we will finish with the Cannabis Control Board and then you can do more work or go home or whatever it is you need to do after that to get done what you need to get done. So that is the day tomorrow.
Okay, great.
And if I don't hear any other things that we need to talk